Yeah, that's me right now. The woman who blew up her perfect little life for what exactly? I'm Valerie, 39, and I never thought I'd be that woman. You know, the one everyone whispers about. It all started so innocently. Maxwell and I had been married for 15 years with twin girls who just turned 12. He was dependable, stable, everything I thought I wanted. But somewhere along the way, I started feeling invisible. Maxwell would come home from his accounting job, kiss me on the cheek, ask about dinner, and then disappear into his home office until bedtime. Day after day, the same routine. I kept thinking, is this really all there is? Between us, I was dying inside while smiling on the outside. Then Ryan started at my marketing firm. Tall, confident, actually listened when I talked. The complete opposite of Maxwell, who could barely remember our anniversary without a calendar reminder. Ryan would bring me coffee in the morning. Not because I asked, but because he noticed I liked it. When was the last time Maxwell noticed anything about me? Those daily coffees turned into lunch breaks, which turned into happy hours. We're just work friends, I told myself, even while I was putting on extra makeup and picking out my best outfits. The first time we kissed was after the company's summer party. Everyone was tipsy, and he walked me to my car. I told myself it was a mistake, that it wouldn't happen again. But then it did, again and again. Soon we were meeting at his apartment during client meetings I'd put on my calendar. The whole thing made me feel alive for the first time in years. Like I was someone worth wanting, not just some glorified house manager whose husband couldn't be bothered to look up from his phone. For 6 months, I lived this double life. Meeting Ryan whenever I could, coming home to Maxwell and the girls, pretending everything was normal. The lying became so easy it scared me. Working late again? Maxwell would ask, and I'd nod, saying, big project deadline, while texting Ryan under the table. Sometimes I'd pick fights with Maxwell just so I could storm out and see Ryan. I'd twist Maxwell's words, make everything his fault. The mental gymnastics I was doing, you wouldn't believe. Ryan knew I was married, but he didn't seem to care. That should have been a red flag, but I was too far gone to see it. You deserve to be happy, he'd tell me, and I'd eat it up like candy. He'd listen to me complain about Maxwell, nodding along, feeding my delusions that I was somehow the wronged party in my marriage. And those women at work who gave me side-eye when Ryan and I would return from lunch together? Just jealous, I figured. If they had boring husbands like mine, they'd understand. New Year's Eve, 2019. That's when everything exploded. Maxwell and I were hosting our annual neighborhood party. I'd been texting Ryan all day, planning to sneak away for a midnight kiss while Maxwell was busy playing bartender. Ryan kept sending messages about how much he wished he was with me instead of at his family gathering. I was glowing from the attention, practically floating around our kitchen as I arranged appetizer trays. Maxwell noticed my good mood and actually tried to hug me from behind. I flinched away, making some excuse about my hair being perfect for the party. The hurt look on his face didn't even register. That's how disconnected I'd become. The party was in full swing when my phone buzzed again. I slipped into our bedroom to check it, giggling at Ryan's suggestive message. I didn't hear Maxwell come in looking for more wine until he was standing right behind me. "Who's making you smile like that?" he asked, his voice strange. I fumbled, nearly dropping my phone, which was all the confirmation he needed. He grabbed it from my hand before I could lock the screen. I watched his face change as he scrolled through months of messages between Ryan and me. Not just the sexy stuff, but all my complaints about Maxwell, the lies about where I'd been, the cruel jokes at his expense. Everything exposed in one horrible moment. The party carried on downstairs while my marriage died in our bedroom. Maxwell didn't yell or throw things. He just looked at me like I was a stranger, this terrible calm settling over him. "How long?" he asked. When I tried to deflect, he cut me off. "Don't lie to me. Not anymore." So I told him, 6 months. His eyes closed briefly, like he was absorbing a physical blow. Then he handed back my phone and walked out. I followed him, panicking, trying to grab his arm. "It's not what you think," I said, though it was exactly what he thought. It doesn't mean anything, though it had meant enough for me to risk everything. Maxwell went downstairs, calmly asked everyone to leave. Our friends looked confused. but something in his expression made them gather their coats without question. I stood frozen at the top of the stairs, watching as he apologized, made up some excuse about a family emergency. Always so considerate. My husband, even while his world was collapsing. After everyone left, he packed an overnight bag and walked out without another word. I spent the night calling and texting him, not because I was sorry, not really, but because I was terrified of consequences finally catching up to me. The girls came home from their sleepover at a friend's house the next day, asking where their dad was. That's when the reality hit me. What was I supposed to tell our daughters? That mommy had been cheating on daddy? That I'd blown up their world for some workplace fling? So I lied again. Told them daddy had a last-minute business trip. When they asked why he hadn't said goodbye, I invented more lies. He had an early flight. He didn't want to wake them. He'd call soon. Each lie adding another brick to the wall I was building around myself. For 3 weeks, Maxwell didn't come home. He'd text the girls daily, but wouldn't respond to any of my messages. I cycled between anger, how dare he just abandon us, panic, what if he never comes back, and self-pity. Ryan kept calling, but I ignored him. Somehow, he didn't seem so exciting anymore. At work, I noticed looks from coworkers. Someone had seen Maxwell leave our party upset. The whispers started. I caught my assistant giving me that judgy side-eye that makes you want to scream. Then finally, after 23 days of silence, Maxwell texted me, "We need to talk. Send the girls to your parents for the weekend." Not a request, a directive. The man who used to ask my permission to buy new golf clubs was now telling me what to do. And the worst part, I was relieved. At least he was willing to talk. At least there was a chance to fix the unfixable mess I'd made. That Friday in late January, I cleaned our house like a crazy person. Changed the sheets, bought Maxwell's favorite beer, even put on the perfume he'd given me for Christmas that I'd barely acknowledged. I stood in front of my closet for an hour choosing what to wear. Not too sexy, that would be inappropriate. But not too casual either. I needed him to remember what he was missing. I settled on jeans and a sweater he once said brought out my eyes. I even made his favorite lasagna, as if good food could make him forget betrayal. When Maxwell's car pulled into the driveway, my heart nearly stopped. He looked different somehow. Thinner, maybe, but also stronger. He didn't use his key, just knocked on the door of his own house like a visitor. When I opened it, the first thing I noticed was he wasn't wearing his wedding ring. Mine was firmly in place. A calculated decision on my part. He walked past me without attempting a hug or even meeting my eyes. The lasagna sat untouched as we moved to the living room. I couldn't stand the silence, so I did what any desperate woman would do. I threw myself at his feet, literally on my knees, sobbing, telling him how sorry I was, how it meant nothing, how we were stronger than my mistake. I called it a mistake. Like I'd accidentally filed the wrong paperwork or forgotten to pay a bill. Not deliberately betrayed him hundreds of times over half a year. I promised to do anything to fix it. Humiliate me, I begged. Punish me however you need to. Just please don't throw away 15 years. Maxwell looked down at me with such pity, it made me nauseous. You shouldn't humiliate yourself, he said quietly. Get up, Valerie. Not honey or Val like before. Valerie like I was a business associate. When I kept crying at his feet, he actually took my arms and physically lifted me to the couch. Then he sat in the chair across from me. The physical distance a perfect mirror of the emotional gulf between us. I've been talking to divorce lawyers, he said, his voice steady. My sobbing immediately stopped. Divorce? That escalated quickly. I'd expected anger, weeks of cold treatment, maybe some marriage counseling where I could paint myself as a neglected wife. But divorce? I hadn't prepared for that. Maxwell continued, explaining that during our separation he'd consulted 3 different attorneys. They all told him the same thing. In our state, the courts typically favored the mother in custody arrangements. Despite my infidelity, he would likely only get weekend visitation with our daughters. The house would probably go to me as the family unit remained with the primary caretaker, and he would have to pay child support, possibly alimony. The most twisted part? As he laid out these facts, a small, horrible part of me felt relieved. Even as the adulteress, I'd keep my home, my kids, and get financial support. The system was working in my favor despite everything I'd done. I tried to keep my face appropriately devastated, but Maxwell saw right through me. "Don't look so pleased, Valerie. This isn't what I want, but if you force my hand, this is where we're headed." He laid out his terms. We could try to reconcile, but it would require complete transparency from me. Phone access, deleting all social media, changing jobs so I'd never see Ryan again, intensive couples counseling. Or, we could separate amicably, work out custody arrangements ourselves, try to minimize the damage to our daughters. What he wouldn't do was pretend nothing had happened. There was no third option where we swept my affair under the rug and carried on. I chose option 3, the one Maxwell hadn't offered. I agreed to his reconciliation terms to buy time, all while planning to gradually ease him back into our normal life without actually changing anything. I deleted Ryan's number in front of Maxwell, but had already memorized it. I deactivated Facebook, but created a secret Instagram account. I agreed to look for a new job, but only sent out token applications. Maxwell moved back home, sleeping in our guest room. He was cordial in front of the girls, but barely spoke to me when we were alone. I kept waiting for him to soften, to miss me enough to drop all these strict requirements. The first marriage counseling session was a disaster. I tried to frame my affair as a symptom of our broken marriage rather than the cause. The therapist, a gentle-voiced woman in her 50s, didn't buy it. "Valerie, there are many ways to address marital dissatisfaction. Having an affair is a choice, not an inevitable outcome." I felt ambushed, like they were ganging up on me. Maxwell spoke about his pain with a rawness that made me uncomfortable. He'd discovered texts where I'd mocked his performance in bed, compared him unfavorably to Ryan. I'd forgotten those messages existed and couldn't meet his eyes as he recounted finding them. 2 months into our reconciliation, Maxwell checked my phone while I was showering. He found the secret Instagram account where Ryan and I had been messaging. I came out of the bathroom to find him packing a suitcase. "I gave you every chance," he said, his voice flat. "I wanted to believe you could change." There was no more discussion, no more options. He called his lawyer that night. When he told the girls he was moving out for a while, they cried and clung to him. I watched from the doorway, suddenly terrified of the moment when they would inevitably ask why, and when they would learn the truth about their mother. That night, after Maxwell left, my 12-year-old Harper looked at me with such accusation in her eyes. "What did you do?" she asked. Not "what happened," or "why is Dad leaving," but "what did you do?" Kids always know more than we think they do. The divorce proceedings started, and Maxwell was efficient. No emotional pleas, no second chances, just methodical separation of our lives. As predicted, I was granted primary custody in the house, with Maxwell getting the girls on weekends. The first time he came to pick them up as a visitor to what had been his home for 15 years, I saw him blink back tears as he waited in the driveway instead of coming inside. The girls ran out with their overnight bags, excited to see their dad, not looking back at me standing in the doorway. That night alone in our big house, my house now, I called Ryan. The excitement was long gone, but I was desperate for validation, for someone to tell me I wasn't a monster. He agreed to come over, and we had sad, mechanical interaction that left me feeling emptier than before. Afterward, he checked his watch repeatedly, making excuses about an early meeting the next day. As he was leaving, he mentioned casually that he'd accepted a promotion in another department. "It's probably for the best if we cool things for a while," he said. "People at work are talking, and I don't need that kind of attention right now." Just like that, I was disposable to him too. Within 3 months of our separation, rumors about my affair had spread through our entire social circle. Invitations dried up. School events became exercises in humiliation as other mothers whispered when I walked by. "That's the one who cheated with the guy from her office." At my daughter's spring band concert, I saved seats for my parents and sister, but they sat with Maxwell instead, leaving me alone in a row of empty chairs. 6 months after our divorce was finalized, I was scrolling through Facebook when I saw a post from Maxwell's cousin. It was a picture of Maxwell at a restaurant, smiling more genuinely than I'd seen in years, across from a pretty brunette I didn't recognize. The caption read, "So happy to see Max finding joy again. Amy is a keeper." The comments were filled with supportive messages, friends and family cheering on this new relationship. My finger hovered over the comment button, but what could I possibly say? I had no right to feelings about this. I clicked on Amy's profile instead, torturing myself with pictures of this stranger who was now part of my former life. She was a pediatric nurse, younger than me, but not dramatically so, with kind eyes and a warm smile. Her profile was filled with book recommendations, hiking photos, and fundraisers for children's hospitals. She looked wholesome, genuine, everything I had failed to be for Maxwell. The real gut punch came 2 weeks later, when the girls returned from their weekend with Maxwell, chattering excitedly about Dad's friend Amy, who had taken them rock climbing and taught them to make homemade pasta. "She's really nice, Mom," Harper said, watching my face carefully. "And she makes Dad laugh a lot." The implied comparison hung in the air between us. When was the last time I had made their father laugh? When was the last time I'd spent a day doing activities focused entirely on them, rather than checking my phone every 5 minutes? That's great, sweetie," I managed, my throat tight. "I'm glad you had fun?" Later, I overheard the twins in their room. "Do you think Dad's gonna marry Amy?" Zoe asked. Harper's response was a knife to my heart. "I hope so. Dad deserves to be happy after what Mom did." They knew. Of course they knew. Maybe Maxwell had told them, or maybe they'd pieced it together from overheard conversations and changed behaviors. Either way, my daughters were aware that their mother had betrayed their father, and they had made their judgments accordingly. At work, things were equally bleak. Ryan had indeed been promoted and moved to another department, but not before rumors of our affair had circulated widely. My female colleagues were particularly cold, perhaps seeing in me their own worst fears about workplace relationships, or perhaps just disgusted by my choices. My boss, who had once considered me for advancement, now barely made eye contact during meetings. I'd become a liability, tagged with an invisible scarlet letter. A year after our divorce, Maxwell and Amy got engaged. The girls came home from their weekend visitation wearing new charm bracelets, gifts from Amy, to celebrate the engagement and welcome them to their expanded family. They were thrilled, already discussing bridesmaid dresses and flower arrangements. I smiled and asked appropriate questions, while feeling like I was watching my replacement take over the life I had discarded. The wedding was scheduled for the following spring. My daughters would be junior bridesmaids. Maxwell's brother would be best man. Everyone had a role except me. The ex-wife, the outsider, the cautionary tale. When the invitation came for the girls, I helped them shop for dresses, did their hair the morning of the ceremony, and waved goodbye as Maxwell picked them up, handsome in his new suit, a lightness in his movements that spoke of a man unburdened. They didn't return until Sunday evening, full of stories about the beautiful venue, the delicious cake, the romantic first dance. "Amy looked like a princess," Zoe sighed dreamily. Harper added, "Dad couldn't stop smiling the whole time." 2 years after our divorce, I found myself sitting alone at my kitchen table on a Friday night, scrolling through dating apps without interest. The girls were with Maxwell and Amy, who was now pregnant with their first child together. My daughters had called earlier, bubbling with excitement about their future half-sibling. "We're helping set up the nursery this weekend," Harper had said. "Amy's letting us pick the colors." Their happiness should have warmed my heart, but instead, it twisted something inside me. They were building a new family that functioned better than our original one ever had. I'd dated sporadically since the divorce, a few setups from well-meaning acquaintances, some men from the apps, but nothing stuck. Each relationship fizzled after a few weeks or months, usually around the time I'd have to explain my past and introduce them to my increasingly distant daughters. My last boyfriend had ended things after meeting the girls, telling me privately that the tension in our interactions was too uncomfortable. "They clearly don't want you to move on," he'd said. But that wasn't it. They didn't trust me not to hurt someone else the way I'd hurt their father. My career had stagnated as well. I'd eventually had to leave my marketing firm when the awkwardness with Ryan and the office gossip became unbearable. My new job paid less and offered fewer advancement opportunities, but it was a place where nobody knew my history. I'd taken to working late, volunteering for every project, because an empty apartment waited for me at home. My social life had dwindled to occasional coffee with my sister, who had never fully forgiven me but maintained contact out of family obligation, and monthly dinners with my parents, who alternated between disapproving silence and gentle suggestions that I needed to move on. The real wake-up call came when Harper, now 14, asked to live with her father. "It's not that I don't love you, Mom," she said, carefully choosing her words in that diplomatic way children of divorce learn too young. "It's just that I'm more comfortable there." When I pressed for a reason, trying to keep the desperation from my voice, she finally looked me in the eye with a maturity beyond her years. "You're still sad all the time, Mom, and you're trying to hide it, but I can tell. At Dad's house, everyone's just happy, normal. I don't feel like I have to walk on eggshells." I wanted to protest, to defend myself, to point out all the ways I'd tried to create a stable home for her. But the truth was hanging between us. I was still mired in regret and resentment, still defined by the worst choice I'd ever made, while Maxwell had rebuilt his life into something better than before. Zoe joined the conversation, quieter but equally determined. "We want to try living with Dad full-time. Just for a while. Please don't make this harder, Mom." The reversal was complete. Instead of Maxwell getting weekend visitation, I would become the parent who saw her children only on schedules and special occasions. I agreed because fighting would only push them further away. But something inside me finally broke. That night, alone in my house, the house I'd won in the divorce but that now felt like a hollow prize, I faced myself honestly for the first time. Every step that had led me here had been my choice. The affair hadn't just happened to me. I had pursued it actively, selfishly. I'd lied repeatedly, not just to Maxwell but to myself about what I was doing and why. I'd prioritized momentary excitement over the family I'd spent years building. And when caught, I'd tried to manipulate and maneuver, rather than truly repair the damage I'd caused. The girls moved most of their things to Maxwell and Amy's house the following weekend. I helped them pack, trying to be supportive, fighting back tears as their rooms emptied of the clothes, books, and trinkets that made this feel like their home. When Maxwell came to pick them up, Amy waited in the car, respectfully giving us space for this painful transition. I caught a glimpse of her rounded belly as she waved to the girls, the physical embodiment of the new family forming without me. Maxwell looked at me standing in the doorway as the girls loaded their suitcases into his SUV. For a moment, I saw a flicker of something like pity in his eyes. "They'll always be your daughters," he said quietly. "This isn't forever. They just need some stability right now." His kindness was worse than any cruelty could have been. I didn't deserve his compassion after what I'd done to him. As they drove away, I realized the full circle of my journey. 5 years ago, I had felt invisible in my marriage and sought validation elsewhere, destroying what I had in the process. Now I truly was invisible. A weekend mother, a cautionary tale, a woman defined by her worst mistake. The affair that was supposed to make me feel alive had led to a half-life, a ghost existence on the periphery of the family that once centered around me. I closed the door on the empty house and faced my future, one I had created entirely through my own choices. The path to rebuilding would be long, and some damage would never be repaired. But for once, I wasn't looking for someone else to blame or for an easy way out. This was my reality now. I had cheated with a coworker, my husband had filed for divorce, and I had been too ashamed to tell our kids why. Now they knew anyway, and I was left with nothing but the truth I had tried so hard to avoid.